Completing a Stuart triple expansion engine part 8, fettling the castings using various different methods. This is the middle cylinder slide valve casting. And these that I've shown before are the castings for the water pump and the air pump. Before they can be machined, they need to be made so they can be held in the forge or chuck accurately. First of all, I intend to use my 1-inch belt sander to clean off the flashings all around the castings. Initially this didn't work too well because the belt that is on the 1-inch belt sander definitely needs to be changed for a new one. No time like the present, I removed the old one and here I'm fitting the new one. These 1-inch sanding belts seem to last for quite a long time. They eventually wear smooth and the parts get hotter, but the finish gets better. Luckily I have a pot of water to cool down the parts right next to the belt sander. As you can see, the moulding flashing on these castings is a little bit excessive, and I'm sure I will feel better when I've removed them. I used the belt sander to start with, but I needed a more accurate way of getting into the corners. I thought it would be a good idea to use my Proxxon motor tool, which is fixed onto the bench mount. And with a small grinder fitted, this was really good for getting into the corners. When cleaning up castings like this, or fettling as it's known, you do have to be careful that you do not remove too much metal, because that would really cause problems when you come to machine the part to the dimensions on the drawing. This small grinder was quite successful for some of the areas and less successful for others. I think maybe it's a good idea to try a different shape of grinder. I removed the one I've currently been using and replaced it with a sharp pointy one. Here it is, spinning and ready to go. This small pointy grinder was much better and really allowed me to get into the inner recesses of the casting. Really, the best way to fettle castings like this is to use a file. Here I'm using a round needle file to start with. Like everything else, it's a good idea to practice this sort of thing. If you're not sure, try it on a piece of scrap metal first. Here I'm using a flat needle file, and now I'm using a square needle file to get into some of the areas where the others wouldn't. This does take quite a while, and I would say this is the initial fettling. There needs to be quite a bit more fettling done to these parts, which are cast gunmetal parts. I'm going to move on now to the cylinder block that needs a bit of shaping. I started off the job by using a flat needle file, but this was very slow. And now of course I'm working on a 99% finished part. To speed up the job and make it more accurate, I'm using this small Proxxon angle grinder fitted with a flapper wheel. I've shown this in my videos previously and I get the usual offensive messages about using it. So I'll just say, don't bother writing in to tell me not to use it. I use it all the time and I'm really good with it. And why is that? Because I practice. The more you use it, the better you get at using it. I think I've heard that before. This is a file. Nothing special about this file except it's a really fine file, but it's still big. It removes quite a lot of metal and it's easy to use. Filing is a skill and filing is an art. What you should really do is put some random lumps of metal in your bench vise and file them to see how accurately you can file. And as I've just mentioned, it's the same with this angle grinder. It's a great tool. It's really easy to control once you know how to do it. This is a paper sanding disc and it's very good for getting into the corners. I should really have removed the steam chest, but I like to live dangerously. It's the only excitement I get in my life these days. It's nearly there, the side's looking smooth and it's the same shape as the other side. Just a tiny bit more trimming at the left hand side and it should be near perfect. Now I'm going to tackle this area. As you can see, the cylinder's been machined for the inlet and exhaust ports. And during the milling process, for some reason, the outer edges of the mounting lugs along one side of the engine have all been flattened. So one by one I'm going to make them round again. First of all I'm using a flapper wheel. Then I decided that my 1-inch belt sander was probably a better tool to use, and here you see the result. This is after I used the polishing spindle on it. Back now to my favourite tool for this job, and I really must stress once again, this is a really good piece of equipment. Once you learn how to use it, you can work wonders with it. It is as controllable as a file, but gives a better finish. Here though, I'm using my large file. This part of the cast iron is quite hard, so I went back to the angle grinder. With this flapper wheel in the angle grinder, the harder you press on, the more metal you remove. And the great thing about this tool is it only goes where you put it. The usual rotary type sanders, like drum sanders, tend to skate about all over the place. But this angle grinder doesn't, it just goes where you put it, and look at the result. I can't argue with that. Try and polish it a bit further just as an experiment. I use the rotary flapper wheel. This is also very good and very controllable. I'm very pleased with the shape and the general finish of this now. After working on this side, I turned the casting over and just gave a light sanding to the other side. Because this was evenly cast all over, it hadn't been machined, I didn't need to use the angle grinder or a file. I just wanted to clean it up slightly. I think that probably these parts will eventually be painted. I don't know yet. If I decide not to paint this part of the casting, I will clean it up some more. The casting is starting to look good now, and the profile of this part of the cylinder block is perfect on both sides, mainly thanks to my Proxxon angle grinder. Please stop writing in and making silly comments about it. It works for me. Because of all the filing and sanding, I need to clean up the casting, and luckily a viewer sent me this. It's a giant toothbrush and it's electric. As you can see, it's a very useful cleaning tool. It has one problem though, the switch isn't sealed. When I had batteries in it and I pressed the button or moved it, I could see sparks inside. And as I often use highly flammable solvents, this is not a good idea. No problem though, because it works just as well without the batteries in it. That's enough of Fettling castings for one day. An essential and very necessary job. Stay well, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.